folks, it's Roger Ramsey over here at Darley College and Career Center and Chef Keisha. Appreciate y'all spending a little time with us today. We're going to do EC3 Really Cooks. We haven't visited for a while. Y'all may have seen this, but they don't tell when that program was recorded. We've been working hard. We're going to celebrate the holidays a little differently this time. You know, when you hear happy holidays, Christmas is the big deal, and I concur, just because that's kind of my religion. That's how the man got here, but it includes New Year's. Now, what folks say about New Year's, it's celebrations and the party life from New Year's Eve. Well, New Year's Day is still an opportunity to get your family together, and there's still some things to consider. So we're going to put together a New Year's Day Southern meal for y'all, and as we go, we're going to explain what the significance of one of those dishes are, looking forward into the next year. Just know this, it's all about prosperity. And it's about getting folks together. So y'all bear with us. We're going to get started here shortly. We've got 5 dishes, I think, coming up. We'll do a pork loin. Explain to you why pork's important. We're going to do some Hoppin' John. That's black-eyed peas. I don't know if they're peas or they're legumes. Maybe they're beans. They're legumes. So we're going to do some Hoppin' John. We're going to do, what else was it? Some braised greens. Most folks do collards. I like turnip greens. We're going to do that. Chef Keisha's going to put together some cornbread, explain the significance of that. That's a little pecan, sandy, crisp
something,
dessert thing.
yeah.
So anyway, hang out with us and we'll gather up some goods. We'll meet right back here and start putting some food on, okay? All right. Now, folks, I grew up, my folks always did the New England boiled dinner for New Year's Day. You know, the corned beef and the potatoes and carrots and cabbage. And I loved it. Well, we'll do a little research into doing a Southern New Year's Day and found out pork's the alternative, the one folks want. Why? I know why. I read why. Pork, it comes from pigs, right? They're an animal. And pigs always eat moving forward. They root forward. They're always moving forward. Whatever is in their way, they keep moving forward. That's why the pork represents New Year's Day. Whatever goes on today, we're going to do a little better, a little more work, a little harder tomorrow. So what we have here is just a pork loin. And it's a piece of meat, comes from about the ribs. Matter of fact, most pork chops you get is probably going to be cut from the loin. There's not a whole bunch of fat, a little bit of fat cap, not much in the muscular fat. It can dry out. What we're going to do with ours, if you notice, it's already rubbed with some herbs, just like this. What's in there, you may ask? There's a little sage, thyme, rosemary, and marjoram, salt and pepper. Reason why it's already rubbed, because you need to let those herbs set on the meat for a little while. So it's been there for at least a couple hours. The meat's been out of the chill box for probably an hour or so. No, it's perfectly safe. Don't leave it out 4 or 5 hours, but let it come up to temperature or close to room temperature. It'll cook more evenly and less likely to dry out. It's not going to hurt you. Not all day, an hour or so, you're good to go. So we're going to put our pork as it is, just seasoned, herbs, salt, pepper, a little bit of oil, into the oven. We're going to cook it up to about 125 degrees. I know that's not completely cooked. Once it gets to about 125, we're going to add some things to it. We're going to add some apples. Yes, these are canned apples. No, I didn't go out and buy them specifically for this. I happen to have them, and they're a labor saver. We'll add some onions and a little brown sugar, and that will go with the meat to finish cooking. Get it up to 145 degrees, let it rest together. Then we're going to take the pan drippings and make a little sauce to go with. So, when we get this in, I'm going to grab some greens. They're going to take the second longest. We'll start talking about greens here in just a minute. Give me just a minute. All right, well, folks, we've got the pork in the oven. It's going to do its thing, just sit out there in that hot box till it gets to about 125 degrees internal temperature. It won't be done, but we're going to add some other flavors to it, our pork and our apples. Our onions and our apples, and let it ride out together. Now, if you notice, I don't know if you got to see it or not, when I put the pork into the oven, I put a probe into it. That's just a thermometer. It keeps track of the internal temperature. If you don't have such a nicety, you can buy them. Okay? Just poke it in, and it literally has a cord or Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, to a thermometer. You can just kind of keep track of it that way. So, what we're going to start now is our braised greens. And the reason for the greens, that's simple. It's the color of money. So, braising some greens, whether these are turnip greens, because that's what I like. Collard greens, kale, cabbage, all those greens represent money, prosperity for the new year. Right? Because we're doing turnip greens, because that's what I like. We're going to add a little bit of turnip into it so you know what you're dealing with. Okay? Now, our recipe says you need some chicken stock. I'm going to say no. Because over Christmas, now if you don't have the luxury that I have in a ham hock, use your chicken stock. But over Christmas, I happen to cook the country ham. Save that hock. It's cooking away right over there, making ham stock instead of the chicken stock. I like it. I don't want to throw it away, right? It's not a good way to start the new year, throwing things away. We need a little oil, salt, pepper, right there. We're going to need turnip greens, right there. We're going to need, it says 2 turnips. Mine's a big one, so we're only going to do 1. And some ham hocks. Well, I'm boiling the ham hock, but what I have here, in this pan here, this little bowl, is some leg meat from the ham from Christmas and some jowl bacon. So 2 different kinds of pork, treated differently, but they're all going to go into our bean greens pot. So first thing let's figure out how to work this oven, get her turned on. Oops, that's full tilt right there. Again, this is jowl bacon. It comes from the face of the animal. Look, he gave us life for you. Eat as much of them as you can. And here's the skin. You don't want that skin in here. So what I've done, I simply sliced our pork this way and that way, make cubes. Set it down here. And now I've got a nice big dice. Last but not least, cut the last of the meat from the skin. Keep your fingers up out the way, please. Nobody gets hurt. That's not a good way to start the year. Now, if you need some extra flavor, use that skin. It's smoked, it's porky, it's salty. It's the same thing I'm doing with the ham hock, just smaller version. So we're going to take our bacon. Yes, it's bacon. It goes into our pan as it's heating up. Now, as a rule, if you're going to pan fry something, you're going to saute something, you always let your pan get hot first. This time not, because I want to render out some of that fat. Now, if you're cooking bacon or duck breasts, it's about the only things I can think of. Because you need to render the fat out of the meat, you start in a cold pan. Now, if the bacon and the turnip were going together, I couldn't cut the turnip on this board because it's bacony, right? But they're still going to cook together anyway. It's not going to be anything bad out of it. So I'm going to go ahead and dice up our turnip. Now, folks say, what's a turnip? It's just like a potato. No, it's not. A potato is a tuber. A turnip's a root vegetable. It doesn't taste like a potato. It's a little more earthy, a little sharper. Something I really enjoy. Folks either like them or they don't. Recipe says chop it. I'm going to say dice it. What's the difference? A standard. Chop's very non-specific. Dices have dimensions. All of them have a shape. Why put a turnip in it? Because we're using turnip greens. You know what you're buying. You know what's in there. Whoops. Do you have to? No. Do you have to use turnip greens? No. Can you use whatever greens you want? Absolutely. If you don't like greens, okay. It's representing money and prosperity. You be you. Do what you want. Good luck. Good luck. Because we're going to have other things that will represent prosperity too. So, while our bacon's doing this thing, let's look at the greens real quick. Now again, if they weren't all going together, that glove would have to go away. But they're all cooking together. It's going to be okay. Nobody's going to get sick today. These are turnip greens, big leaves. Best way to do it, kind of grab by the stem, tear that stem out, leaves into smaller pieces, and that's kind of all you have to do, right? Keep in mind, these leaves grow in dirt, a plant that sets in the dirt in a field. Why is that important? Because every time it rains, the field gets washed up onto the leaves. So when it's time for you to make your leaves, you need to wash them first. Now, what I'll do, I'm blessed with this great big expensive kitchen, and we've got what we call produce sink. So it's two sinks, or two basins in one sink that hold probably 20, 25 gallons of water. So I just fill one sink up, scrub the greens, let them set on top of the water, the dirt settles out to the bottom, and there you go. You can do the same thing in your sink if you have two basins. If not, you just have to book the sink up for a few minutes until you get to your greens cleaned up. Wash them, let them float, dirt settles down, take the greens off the top of the water, and you're good to go. Alton Brown did a show many, many years ago, as I recall. If you remember Alton Brown, he had a program on called, well, he's had many programs on, but this in particular was called Good Eats. He's from Atlanta, Georgia. Apparently they ate a lot of greens in Atlanta. And so when they were doing a family function, he would get his greens together and run them through the rinse cycle of his washing machine. That's what he said, as I recall it. We don't have that many greens to do. We'll stick with our sink. So, y'all, unless you just want to sit here and watch bacon render, not much going to be going on in the next few minutes. I'm going to tend to this, and we'll be back to you here shortly.
All right, so now we're going to make some fried cornbread. There's nothing in the world that says Southern like fried cornbread. So, what are we going to make fried cornbread? So, our cornmeal is this good yellow golden color. And gold is good for prosperity, and it says that if you eat cornbread, then you're going to have extra money in your pocket. So, let's make some cornbread. But we're also not just going to make regular cornbread. We're going to fry our cornbread. So, I've got my skillet getting warm, because this takes a little while. So, I'm going to go ahead and put my oil in it so it'll get warm too. Now, you could always use bacon grease. We don't have any of that handy. So we're just going to use some good old vegetable oil here. So, got that getting warm. Now, we got our 2 cups of cornmeal here. Let me set this over here out of the way. 1/4 teaspoon of salt. A little all-purpose flour to kind of hold it together. Got a little oil. Now, you could also use some bacon fat here if you wanted. We're just going to use some good old vegetable oil. Some water. Some buttermilk, because that's going to make it good. And an egg. To hold it together. Then we're just going to whisk it all together. Now it's going to be thick because we're going to drop it over here in our skillet once it gets hot. And you're going to fry it up just like you fry a pancake. It's going to be this good, rich color here. You're just going to use a spoon. And you're going to fry it until it's good and brown on each side. Got a little bit of my buttermilk stuck on the side here. And then you'll flip it just like a pancake. The best way to serve them is with some good warm butter. Now, I don't know about you, but my grandma always had some butter sitting out on the table. We're almost there. Let's see. See if we're hot yet. Yep, we're there. So, just get you a spoonful. Now, you could use a measuring cup if you wanted, but we're not going to go there. And you're just going to drop it in. Now, you want to make sure your oil is hot, because if not, it's not going to, it'll stick, and it's not going to hold together real well. Now, let's see how this is going to go. It's been a while since I made fried cornbread, so. All right. My spoon's going to fall in my bowl, then I'm going to have to fish it out. Now, I always like to have something to put them on to catch the extra grease. You don't have to. I just like to. Now, you can flip it a little early. That way you can kind of see how it's looking. Move it around in your skillet. Then you can drop some more. Now, you can make them bigger, you can make them smaller. Just kind of depends on what you're looking at. Kind of flatten it out with your spoon. Move it around. Now, you could also just make cornbread and put it in your cast iron skillet and put it in the oven. But if you've never had fried cornbread, I suggest you try some good fried cornbread. It's kind of like a hush puppy without the onions. All right. Now, the first one I dropped is getting solid on both sides, so I can move it around. Flip it back over and let it get some color now. Now, the second one's bigger, and it's starting to bubble on me. So I'm going to go ahead and flip it. See? It's holding together just fine. Now, don't be like me. I always flip it away. I flipped it towards me. That could have burned me. Don't do that. So I'm just going to let them sit for a few minutes. Now, you'll start to see in your mix that your milk will start to kind of come up to the top a little bit. Just mix it up as you go. If you want to get real fancy, you can put some jalapenos in there, put some cheese in there. Now, if you don't like any color on your cornbread, you can take them out once they start to harden up. But you don't have to. You can leave them in there. They're starting to get a little brown. You want to make sure you don't have your heat up too high, because if your oil gets too hot, then they'll start to burn. Then they'll be black the further we get into it. And nobody wants charred cornbread, because then it tastes like dirt or burnt. I think the first time I made fried cornbread, it tasted burnt, and it was terrible. My poor husband ate it anyway, though. Now, if you're using a bigger skillet, you can put a whole lot more in there. I'm using this little one because it fits on our little top here. All right, I'm going to pull this one. This one's got a good golden brown color to it on both sides. You can kind of peek when you go to flip, see if it's ready to flip. That one's not quite, but I've got room. So I'm going to drop another one. I always like to wait and make sure no more is going to fall off my spoon. Whoop, that one almost went everywhere. All right, I got a whole bowl of cornmeal here to fry. So I'm gonna fry these and we'll be right back and see what else we're gonna make up for you guys.
Well, folks, our pork is par cooked. It's not done. Got up to about 122, 123 degrees. To be honest, I just got tired of waiting. We pulled it out. It's got to go back into 145 regardless. So, it's got all the herbage on it. It's got salt, pepper, a little bit of oil. Now we need to get the other flavor components to it. That is, these onions and our short-cutted apples. Again, I would not go out and buy canned apples for this recipe. No, I just happen to have some. So why not use them? So, onions have already been peeled. We're not going to worry about a nice pretty dice on this because they're not going to get served with the dish. They're going to flavor it, add some aroma to it, add to the sauce, but they're not going to get served with it. Y'all often hear me say, I don't like the term chop because there's no standard. There's not to this one either. We're just calling it wedges. It's going to cook another 20, probably 25, 30 minutes. We want the pieces big enough they don't get burnt. Small enough they do give up their aroma, they do give off their flavor. So that's kind of the method behind the madness. Apples and onions are together. There's a little brown sugar in here too, because why not? Then it's just a matter of getting the apples and the onions and the pork all together to finish up roasting and becoming lovely. Pot holders, and it goes back into the oven till the instant read thermometer says it's 145 degrees. Remember, it's a whole piece of meat. You treat pork the same way you do beef, same way you do veal. It's a whole piece of meat. ServSafe says it's cooked through at 145 degrees. If you push it much farther, again, there's no intermuscular fat here. It's just going to dry out. So if it has a little pink blush to it, it's okay. Treat it like you would a piece of meat. And, oops, that's the timer, back to 145. We get this mess out the way, and we're going to start on some Hoppin' John, some black-eyed peas. Again, Hoppin' John is a variation of black-eyed peas. They're not beans, they're peas. The difference, they're all legumes. All right, so what do we need? We need 2 pans this time, and to get them hot. Okay. Hoppin' John, love it. He uses kind of the Trinity vegetables. That's carrots, onions, and celery. We've cut all those before. Just a quick refresher. I said carrots. It's not carrots. That's wrong. It's bell pepper, celery, and onion. Just a little refresher on bell peppers. Snip the top and bottom. That's easy enough. Cut down the length of it and kind of unroll it to cut out those white membranes. All right, that's what holds the seed pod to the interior of the fruit. So it's done its thing. We don't need it in there. Specifically, it's kind of bitter. We don't want it in there. Cut it down into strips. Strips into sticks. Now, if that's too big for you, whack it in half this way. Make it a manageable size. So, how we describe it in class, you make planks. That's a plank. Take the planks into sticks. These are sticks. Specifically, if we stop there, that has a name. It's called a julienne. If you turn a julienne sideways and cut it again, that handle that way about made a mess. Then you have a small dice, 1/4 of an inch cube, not square, cubed. And this dice and a pepper 101. Already done. We need a little bit of cooking oil. A little bit more than that. Happen to have more though, somewhere over here. Just because you have the bottle doesn't mean you came prepared. So that's olive oil now, because it was closest. Once we get our olive oil in, we need to saute our vegetables. Now, I told y'all about, I think I did, the ham hock that I saved from Christmas dinner. Made ham stock out of. This is it. Sure is ugly. Still hot too. What we're going to do is kind of pull some of this meat off, and it's going to go into our Hoppin' John along with the ham stock. All skin, don't want that. Another little bone. Want that out. Tongs out of the way. More skin, don't want that. We'll take the fat though. Now, all you want to do is make sure you got all that cartilage and gristle out of the way, because it is from the joint. Give it a nice fine chop. Hey, I use the word chop. Chef Pitt, I use the word chop. Technically, classical sense, this would be a mince, not a chop. So there's our ham bits. It's going to go in shortly. What else do we need? We've got our peppers, onions. We're not putting jalapeno in there, garlic. We need our garlic. Now, garlic doesn't take near as long to cook as peppers and onions. Matter of fact, and celery. Matter of fact, it will burn the amount of time it takes for onions to cook. That's why we don't put them all in there together. Garlic skin? Garlic skin. Oh, if you didn't notice, all I did, I pushed down on top of the garlic with the side of my knife. Keep your fingers up off the blade to do that. It crushes the garlic and breaks the skin. It's a little easier to peel. That's all. I'm going to do it again here in just a minute. Not to remove the skin because it's off, but to start a paste. Get rid of the little. Now, if you're curious why I have two pans up, Hoppin' John is classically served with white rice. White rice is particularly easy to make, inexpensive, almost universal in the food world. About all you really need, some rice, some water, and a little salt. The math is easy to remember. It's 2 parts water, that's 2 cups, to 1 part rice. So, bring your water to a boil, season a little bit of salt, just enough to make it taste good. Probably half a teaspoon, wasn't much. Rice goes in. Give it a stir. Bring it back to a boil. That's what we're waiting on. Put a lid on it, leave it covered, don't touch it. Touch it for about 15 minutes. At the end of those 15 minutes, turn that heat way down. 15 minutes, sneak a peek. If you can't see water on top of it, turn the heat off altogether, put the cover back on, and leave it. I'm going to change that probe. I don't think that's done all the way. Yeah, it's Christmas music. Put your cover back on, take it off the heat, leave it set for about 10 minutes. The last of that water will have absorbed into the rice and life's good. Now, don't treat rice the way you do pasta. Okay, pasta rehydrates in water, so you have to season it heavily. Rice absorbs the water. You have to be very particular about how you season it. They should be done. Take my word for it. Okay, yeah, they're done.
I'll turn them off.
Okay. So, we've got our vegetables, our garlic, our ham, and what else goes in there? Let's take a little look-see. Wet and dirty. We've got our ham and Cajun season right here. The recipe calls for dried black-eyed peas. Yeah, you can do that. I didn't want to. I canned black-eyed peas. They cook faster. They're already cooked. So these are canned beans that were rinsed, or drained and rinsed, and they're going into fresh vegetables, a new seasoning, to become a new product. Now, I don't need that whole number 10 can. Take about half of it. Now, what else can you do with those leftover beans? You like veggie burgers? Like how peas make the veggie burgers. Then we need a little bit more of our ham stock. Look at the bottom of my pan. My burger's not burning properly, making everything sooty. Have to get our maintenance guys to come take a look at that. Now, black-eyed peas are already cooked. Just have to bring it back to temperature. Let that liquid that we put in there in the form of our ham stock, because we like ham, reduce. And Bob's on. So I'm going to take this, put it back on the real burner. See, we've done our pork. I need to adjust that probe, make sure it's good and done, or done. We've done our greens. Chef Pitt did the golden cornbread. I'm doing the brassy penny colored, like change and money, still money, black-eyed peas, and I think all that leaves is our dessert. So we're going to be done up in here shortly and make some plates. This would take about 20 minutes to finish out. We'll let that do its thing till it's done. I'm going to check on that pork, get this mess cleaned up. Chef Pitt will be back with you in just a few minutes.
All right, so every good dinner needs a dessert. So we're going to take our pecan pie and make a little twist. So we're going to make pecan crisp. So instead of making a pie dough, we're actually going to use a puff pastry. So I've already chopped up most of our pecans, so I'm just going to throw them in this bowl. But I've got a few extra here just to kind of give you a demo here about chopping our pecans. Now, if we were making a pie, pecans this size would be perfect. But since we're actually going to put them in a muffin tin, we want them to be a little smaller. That way we get more pecans in each bite. So we're just going to dice them up, chop them up, make them a little smaller. That way we get more in each little cup. Because we're actually only going to put a teaspoon of filling in each one of our little cups. So we want it to be smaller so we get more per bite. If not, You're not going to get a whole lot. Now, I just mince these up kind of fine. Now, if you want them to be bigger pieces, you can do that. Just kind of whatever you're looking for. So, just going to throw that in there. Now, this isn't your traditional pecan pie. We're not going to have corn syrup and all that. It's just 3 quick ingredients to go in our filling. Some brown sugar, our pecans, of course. Get this cutting board here out of the way. Give me a little more room. And some butter. So our butter is going to hold everything together. It'll also help kind of melt this brown sugar. Kind of give it that syrupy texture and flavor that everybody's used to. So we're just going to mix it all up. Don't do that. The bulb popped on the bottom and shot filling everywhere. Did it again. Now, brown sugar will clump up, so kind of got to smush it around. Make sure it's all mixed up. So when we bake this, our butter will actually melt some more into our puff pastry here. So it's going to be kind of thick. Our brown sugar is going to kind of clump up because of the butter. All right, so I'm going to set that aside. I don't need that right now. I got to work on my puff pastry. Before I do that, you're just going to take a regular old pie tin. I'm going to spray it with some cooking spray. Now, this makes our stuff non-stick. If I take this and I spray it over here, over the floor, and Chef walks by, or I walk this way, I'm going to make the floor non-stick. So, always spray it over something. And ours is evidently clogged, as it is making a mess everywhere. There it goes. So whatever you spray this on, it's going to make that surface non-stick too. And if you've never stepped on cooking spray on the floor, consider yourself lucky. Because I have, and I almost went sliding all over my kitchen floor. My kids thought it was funny. I did not think it was funny. Gotta make sure I clean that out later. All right. So, we've got our puff pastry here. It's just regular old puff pastry. Now, I am going to flour my surface, as you do with any kind of dough you're working with. I got a pecan stuck here. Because if not, it's going to stick. Now, our recipe says we want our dough to be 15 by 12. Now, let's see how big we are. All right, we're 15 that way, but we're only 10 and some change that way. So I'm going to have to roll it out a little bit. Now, flour a little bit on top. We don't want our rolling pin to stick. Since I only need to go this way, I'm just going to kind of roll it forward. We're not sticking, so that's okay. Now, you don't have to have one of these things. A regular old ruler will work. Now, I'm nowhere near 12 here. So, I'm going to flour it a little more. Keep hoping we get to 12 without it getting too thin. We don't want it to get too thin. because it's going to be a little hard to work with. Now, the top half up here is sticking just a hair. I'm going to run some flour under it because I didn't flour my surface very well. There we go. Now we're better. That looks close to 12. All right, we got 12 in the middle, but not on the edges. So that means I'm going to work to get my edges closer to 12. Now, you can pick up puff pastry just about anywhere, Kroger, Walmart, I think the dollar store. Now, it will get kind of thin because we've rolled it out. There we go. All right, now, a lot of people don't have one of these. I don't have one of these at home. But you can use a good old-fashioned pizza cutter will work. I'm not very good with these. I don't have big hands to use these. Chefs are real good with them. But I've got it set for 3 inches each. I'm going to run it up that way. And then I'm going to turn it. This is just like a big giant pizza cutter. You can always just use a pizza cutter and a ruler. It'll do the same thing. I better leave that. I might need that. So then I'm just going to pull off the edges here. Now our recipe says it will make 20. Mine obviously did not make that many. Oh, it might have. It did. I'm just kidding. I just can't count today. So, to load it in our muffin tins, you're just going to take your little square, my poor little square here, and you're just going to sit it down in your muffin tin. Now, it is thin, so got to be careful with it. And you're just going to sit it down in there. Now, when you cook these are going to expand because they're puff pastries. So, it's in the name, puff. So it's going to do just that. It's going to puff. Now, for some reason, if it doesn't cut, you can take your knife, your pizza cutter, whatever you're using, and just perforate the edge a little bit. I'm going to move this stuff around, grab my cutting board just in case I need it. Ah! That one is no longer a square, thanks to my cutting board, but it's okay. Not a big deal. Move this a little closer, make it a little easier so I don't have to stretch. Now, if you rolled your pizza cutter over it, you will have a faint line. That's how I cut my dumplings when we make chicken and dumplings. It's with a pizza cutter. But your goal is to have a 3x3 square. Now, I didn't measure these. I set the dough cutter at 3x3. So, we should be close. So, we're just going to fill these up with our little dough here. I didn't get the edges very good. My arm's not long enough to reach up that far. Over here. All right, we got one more. Actually, I had two. Just one I had to cut. All right. So then, find my teaspoon here. That's a half a tablespoon. That's way more. It says you're going to take 1 heaping teaspoon and put in each little cup. Now, I will tell you, my butter was melted, but since it started to cool, it started to harden back up. And because it did that, as you can tell, my filling's a little stiffer than it was when we started. So, like I said earlier, whenever it goes to bake, it will melt again, and the butter will get into our puff pastry, but it does make it a little harder to scoop into our cups here. Now, it's holding the shape of my teaspoon, so I am going to break it up a little bit. That way it's not stuck in that shape. Now, we're going to bake these for about 12 minutes at 400 degrees. So you want your puff pastry to kind of be a golden brown color. We'll take them out. You can dust them with powdered sugar if you want. We'll kind of see how they look. See how they shape up. So since they're in the muffin tin, they're going to hold the shape of the muffin tin. They should make like a cup. They'll kind of be like a cupcake. I'm going to say we're going to have more filling, so you can always go back and add a little more where there's not enough. That's just my guesstimate from the way this looks. Since I'm over halfway done, and there's still quite a bit left. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. Let's see. Now, if you wanted, you could always add some spices to it. You could do this with apples if you wanted. If you didn't want to do pecans. There's a whole lot you could do with a puff pastry. We just wanted to stick with our southern theme. Don't be like me and almost dump your filling in the floor. Got this whole big table, and I'm going to throw stuff in the floor. All right, I've got a little bit left, so I'm going to check, move my flour, throw that in the floor in a minute, and see if I have any that don't have a whole lot, and try to kind of fill them up. You kind of want them to have an even amount. And you've got all this extra filling. Now, you might just want to eat your filling, and if that's the case, just eat it. But if not, just look around, see which ones need a little more. Just put it in there, fill it up. That way we don't waste it. So, we've got these filled. They look good. So, I'm going to pop these in the oven behind me. They should be done in about 12 minutes, and we'll see how they look.
Well, folks, thank y'all for coming to visiting. We've had a pretty good time hanging out today, celebrating New Year's. So, we've got pork, because our friend the pig always moves forward. We've got greens, color of cash. We've got cornbread, color of gold. And we've got hoppin' john, those legumes, those black-eyed peas, color of coins. And we've got pecan, what's?
Crisp.
Just because, why not? Folks, we've had a good time hanging out with you. We greatly appreciate it. When you think about the holiday season, Christmas comes first. I think it should, but that's just me. The New Year's Eve for them young folks. I'm not young anymore.
I will be sleeping.
She's still young. And then New Year's Day. So, from the bottom of our hearts, from our family here at the school and our families at home, we wish y'all the very best for the new year. Health, prosperity, joy, family. So, y'all have a happy new year.